Today's daf is daf Lamed Tes, and we'll begin on the third line. Omar Rava Barav Huna, Kevan Sheniftach Sefer Torah. Once they opened up the Sefer Torah, and it means that the person who's reading the Sefer Torah is beginning to read the Sefer Torah. And the Shulchan Aruch paskins in Simon Kuf Mem Vav, Kevan shehischil hakore likros b'Sefer Torah, osur l'saper. Everyone has to be quiet. Afilu b'dvar halacha, you're not even allowed to talk about halacha once Kriyas HaTorah has begun. Shenemar, and now we go back to Sefer Nehemiah that records that Ezra read the Torah li'enei kol ha'am, publicly. And it says, uchfischo, when he began to read the Sefer, omdu kol ha'am, the people stood. However, we don't interpret that word stood literally, v'ein amida ela shesika. So once Ezra began to read the Torah, the people became quiet because you're not allowed to speak during Kriyas HaTorah. And we find that the language of shtika is appropriate for Amida, Shenemar, with regard to a pasuk in Eov, when his friend Elihu responded to Eov, he says, Vehochalti, and I waited, ki lo yidabru ki omdu v'lo anu od. I waited until I saw that your other friends, your other comrades and colleagues would not speak. Omdu. They were shosek, they were silent, v'lo anu od, and they didn't respond at all. So you see that in the pasuk uses the word amida as a kinui to replace the word shtika. Rabbi Zera Omar b'shem Rabbi Chizda mehacha. The prohibition against speaking during Kriyas HaTorah is to be derived from a different pasuk, also in the same chapter of Nehemiah Perek Ches, v'oznei kol ha'am el Sefer HaTorah, that the people hitu oznam, they move their ears, so to speak, in the direction of the Sefer Torah in order to hear the Kriya, which means clearly that they didn't speak. V'amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. This is all part of the series of 8 different halachas that were formulated by Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Kol kohen shelo notal yodov lo yisas kapav. If he doesn't wash his hands before he goes up to duchen, then he should not bless the people. And this he derives from the pasuk shenemar se'u yedechem kodesh ubarchu es Hashem, that they raise their hands kodesh and then they mevarach es Hashem. And this is a pasuk in Tehillim Perikuf Lamed Daled. Now, is there a clear-cut remez here to Netilas Yadayim? It says, Se'u Yedechem Kodesh. And then it says, Ubarchas Hashem. I'm not sure that Ubarchas Hashem in the simple meaning is referring to Birchas Kohanim. That bracha is bestowed on Klal Yisrael. Here it says, Birchas Hashem, they were Mevarach Hashem. But apparently, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi had 2 problems with this pasuk. It says, Se'u yedechem kodesh. What does that mean? Lift up your hands kodesh. It doesn't make sense. And furthermore, Uberchas Hashem, it sounds like every bracha that a person bestows or extols Hashem, he has to raise his hands. And we didn't find any such a thing except with regard to Birchas Kohanim that they raise up their hands. That's the only bracha that requires Nesias Kapayim. And therefore he interprets this pasuk, Rabbi Yishmael Levi, as referring to the moment that they raise their hands to be Mevarech. And the Kohanim bestow the blessing. And they have two conditions. Number one, that the Yadayim have to be Kodesh, which means they have to wash their hands first. And furthermore, they have to be Varchas Hashem Kodem HaBrocha. Okay, so Varchas Hashem means that there's a requirement of a bracha before the actual bracha, which probably means that the bracha that the Kohanim recite before the bracha is an integral part of the bracha. Now, we want to quote the Mordechai, who mentions that there are those who stand during Kriyas HaTorah, even though the Gemara interprets the Amida as shtika. But since the literal translation of the Amdu Kol Ha'am is that they stand, therefore they stand. But the Mordechai rejects this shita, and he says that it's against our sugya, that the word Amida here in the pasuk Amdu Kol Ha'am refers to shtika. However, there are those who want to justify that tradition that was quoted by the Mordechai to stand during Kriyas HaTorah. And they say that, you know what, the Gemara wants to impress upon us that you're not allowed to speak during Kriyas HaTorah, and therefore we interpret the Amdu Kol Ha'am as shtika, but it doesn't mean that we take the word Amida out of the Pshuta. And I heard once from my Rebbe, Rav Soloveitchik, that he said that we should be duplicating Matan Torah. And in Matan Torah, it says, V'amdu kol ha'am, that they actually stood. And I'm pretty sure that was his minhag, to stand during Kriyas HaTorah, if I remember correctly. Sholu Talmid Beis Rabbi Elazar ben Shamua b'meh harachta yomim. What was your zchus that you lived to a long old age? Amar lahem, he said he had 3 minhagim, and they were beyond the letter of the law. Number one, miyamai lo asisi beis hakneses kapandria. I never used the shul as a shortcut, even in situations where, according to the technical halacha, it would have been permitted. For example, let's say there's a pathway that's structured in front of the Beis HaKnesses. And you can imagine that if he goes in that pathway towards the Beis HaKnesses, his intention was not to use the Beis HaKnesses as a shortcut, but nevertheless, Rabbi Elazar ben Shamua, once he decided to go out of the shul, he would not go out in the shortest way because he was machmer midas chasidus. Furthermore, lo pasati al Roshei Am Kodesh. The Talmidim used to sit on the floor in front of the Rebbe, and I wouldn't walk in between them, because if you look from the back, it would appear as if I'm stepping over their heads. And therefore, I would come earlier than them, and I would sit down before they would come. And thirdly, I'm a Kohen, v'lo nasasi kapi below bracha. Now, why does that fall under the category of lifnim mishur sadin? L'chora, he's obligated to recite the bracha. Every Kohen is obligated to be mevarech a birchas ha-mitzvah before the birchas kohanim. So what's the chiddush over here? And the Ritva at the end of Masechet Megillah says that although this bracha is a chova, nevertheless, skulasa meruba, Shamavarech also misbarech umarech Yomi. So Rabbi Lazar ben Shamuel wants to teach us that there's a special power inherent in the bracha. But the Meiri says that the Gemara doesn't have in mind the bracha of Asher Kitshon v'Kedushasav Shel Aaron, etc., etc., but rather what it says later on that after the bracha, a Kohen recites a nusach of Ribon Olam Asisi Masha Gazar Tolenu, etc., etc., and he was meshabech himself that he would add his own additional feeling, or I shouldn't say feeling, but with his feeling, he would extend the bracha beyond the official Ribon Olam nusach. My mevarech. What is the nusach of the Birchas Kohanim? And again, this fits in with what we said before. The bracha before Birchas Kohanim is an integral part of Birchas Kohanim. Amar Rav Zera, Amar Rav Chizda, Asher Kitshanu b'Kedushaso Shel Aaron v'Tzivanu levarach es Amo Yisrael bi'ava. And why add the word bi'ava? I mean, every mitzvah should be done bi'ava. But here it says Emor lahem. And there's an extra vav in the word Emor, because very often Emor is written without a vav. And the Chazal Darshan in the Medrash Rabbah, Amalem HaKadosh Baruch Hu l'kohanim lo mipnei she'amarti lachem shetiu mevarchim es Yisrael tiu mevarchim osam b'angaria. It means that when I said Emor lahem, I didn't want you to just simply by rote, in a very fast way, just give the bracha. But tiu mevarchim osam b'kavanas halev. The bracha should come from a certain feeling of ava, and that was integrated into the nusach habracha. Ki akar kare my omar. When the Kohen would begin moving towards the duchen, which the Gemara establishes on Daf Lamed Ches has to take place at the moment that the shots reaches Avodah Ritzeh, he would turn his face towards the Aron Kodesh until the Shliach Tzibur would complete Modim with Tov Shimcha L'Chanel Odos. And at this point, he would pray to Hashem before turning towards the people for the bracha. Meaning before the Shliach Tzibur was Messiah the Birchas Modim, and he would recite the following petition to Hashem, Yirotzon Fanecha Hashem Elokeinu, Shetehei bracha zu shetzivisanu levarech es amcha Yisrael, lo tehei ba michshol v'avon. Now, what exactly is going on over here? The Kohanim need a tefillah before the bracha, and the Gemara wants to know why. And it seems that there's a possibility of a michshol that could come out of the bracha, of the Birchas Kohanim. And why is that? Chazal darshan yivarecha Hashem b'mamon. Now, when it comes to mammon, you never know what mammon could bring you. It could be a great blessing, or which is called Osher L'Tova, but it's very tricky, Marba Nechasim, etc. However, since it's Erev Lag BaOmer, we should quote the Zohar. Rav Shimon Bar Yochai says that a Kohen who does not love the people or is not beloved by the people is not permitted to be Noseis Kapav. And if he goes ahead and he's Noseis Kapav, he's in great danger. So therefore the Kohen will be Mavakesh from Hashem that this bracha should not be a michshol, that maybe Chas v'Sholom he has a certain element of sinah in his heart, and that's very dangerous. And the Rav Yaakov Emden is quoted as saying that the michshol here is that they should say the bracha kilchasa, because if, let's say, ha'avon, if there are sins, then he might have kavanah for avonos, and he's not the Kohen Gadol who's bringing a kapara for the avonos of Klal Yisrael. He's blessing Klal Yisrael. So apparently these thoughts about the avonos of Klal Yisrael could possibly undermine the bracha. After he finishes the bracha, he also needs a petition to Hashem. So the Shliach Tzibur finished the bracha of Sim Shalom, Avarch Samiso Bashalom, and therefore the Chazor Hashatz has now been completed. And Advare, they had a minhag now. And who instituted this minhag? It's Rav Chizda and Rav Ukva v'Darash Ribono Shalom Asisi or Asinu Masha Gazarta Oleinu. In other words, even though every mitzvah is a gzeras hakosav, and you do it because of the divine decree, but you need a special emphasis on the gzeras hamelech with regard to birchas kohanim. And why is that? He says, Kevan she'abracha tzricha lios panim keneged panim. Since they have to face the people, their backs are facing the backs of the Kohanim are facing the Shekhinah. And that creates a certain ema, a certain fear that he's turning his back, Chasholom, on the Shekhinah. And therefore he has to declare, Ribono Shalom, I'm doing what you commanded me. But others say that the reason why he has to say that I'm doing what you commanded me is because what a chutzpah it is for him to give the bracha to other people. And this is the famous story about the Chavetz Chaim, who was a Kohen, and he once had an opportunity in that kahal to be visited by the Gadol Adar, Reb Chaim Ozer, and he hesitated to go up to Duch in the Chavetz Chaim. How can I bless the Gadol Adar, Reb Chaim Ozer? By the way, I think it was Reb Chaim Ozer who twisted the Chavetz Chaim's arm, proverbially, to write the Mishnah Berurah, which was dedicated, the Chavetz Chaim dedicated a chunk of his life to that. In any event, so that's when, the Chavetz Chaim said, I now understand why I have to say Asisi Kasher Gazartol, because if not for the Gzeres HaKosav, how could I have the chutzpah to be Mevarach the Gadol Adar, Reb Chaim Ozer? Masha Avtoni, Iftach. And now the Kohen asks the Ribono Shalom, if I did what you commanded me, Asei Imanu, reciprocally, you fulfill that which you promised to us to give the haskama for the bracha, as the pasuk says, "V'somu shmi al bnei Yisrael va'ani avarchem." Also, we have another pasuk in Parshas Kisavo, "Hashkifa mimon kodshecha min hashamayim ubarech es amcha es Yisrael." Rav Chizdein HaKohanim Rishon Lochuf Kishrei Etzba Osa Esposein Ad Sheyachzeru Pneiam Min HaTzibur. The Kohanim are not permitted to close their hands, right? They open their hands for the bracha until they turn their backs from the people towards the aron, towards the table, which is when the Shliach Tzibur recites Sim Shalom, as the Gemara is going to explain. So in other words, they should continue leaving their hands in that position without being kofef their hands until after the bracha of Sim Shalom. the Kohanim are not permitted to bend their finger joints until they turn their faces away from the congregation.